Start with an embankment of packed earth in a Yemeni valley, faced with stone, some 600 meters long, over 10 meters high, masonry sluices at either end. This is the Great Dam of Marib. It turned one wadi's monsoon flood into spillways and canals, watering up to 10,000 hectares. In 548, a ruler named Abraha cut a stele recording its repair, 136 lines of Sabaic, his longest. The same stone records something else. That year he received embassies from the king of Aksum, the Roman emperor, the king of Persia, and both Arab client dynasties. Why they came is not known. 5 powers sent men into a valley in southern Arabia. Abraha was a Christian of Aksumite background who had seized Yemen and ruled in his own name, paying Aksum nominal tribute. Himyar had been something else first. From about 380, the polytheistic inscriptions of South Arabia stop almost entirely, replaced by appeals to one god, Ramanan, Lord of heaven and earth. Historians read its later kings as adopting a form of Judaism. In 523, the Himyarite king Yusuf Azayar Yathayar moved against the Christians of Najran. 3 inscriptions survive from his own side. 1, cut for a commander named Sherahil Yakbal, boasts of 12,000 killed and 11,000 taken across the whole campaign. For Najran itself, Christian accounts in Syriac and in Greek give their own counts of the dead. They do not agree. No figure here is secure. Aksum invaded across the Red Sea, and by 525 Himyar's Jewish kingship was over. Around 570 a Persian force took Yemen instead. The same pattern ran north. Al-Hira on the Euphrates, capital of the Lakhmids, Persia's Arab clients until Persia abolished the dynasty in 602. Jabia in the Golan, seat of the Ghassanids, Rome's clients and Miaphysite Christians. Bishops from Beth Katre on the Gulf Coast subscribed to Church of the East Synods, the first of them in 410. In the northern oases, the oldest dated evidence of a scriptural faith is Jewish. A memorial inscription at Tama from 203, a tomb inscription at Hegra from 356. Yathrib, an oasis 340 kilometers north of Mecca, is remembered in later Muslim sources as holding Jewish and pagan clans. The war that would break both empires was only beginning. Persia would hold Jerusalem by 614. Mecca sits inside that world and nearly outside its records. Caravans moved between Yemen, the Hijaz, and Syria. Whether Mecca commanded that trade has been contested since 1987. No pre-Islamic text names it beyond dispute. The Kaaba is first described in detail by Muslim writers of the 8th and 9th centuries. By 610, Arabia held Jewish clans, Miaphysite and East Syriac churches, and kings who had ruled in the name of one god. 5 kilometers northeast of the Kaaba, a mountain called Jabal al-Nur reaches 642 meters above sea level. High on its flank is a cleft in the rock called Hira, not quite 4 meters deep and 1.60 meters across. Muslim tradition holds that around 610, in that cave, Muhammad received the first words of the Quran. No contemporary record of it survives. No inscription marks the cave, and no Meccan document from 610 to 622 has come down to us. The first full biography we know of was compiled around the 760s, more than a century after Muhammad's death, by Ibn Ishaq, born in Medina. Ibn Ishaq's book is lost. It reaches modern readers chiefly through the recension of Ibn Hisham, who worked in Fustat and died in 833. 2 parchment leaves in Birmingham, carrying text from surahs 18 to 20, radiocarbon date, to between 568 and 645 at 95% confidence. That dates the skin, not the ink, and the range is nearly 80 years wide. The tradition places Mecca on the caravan routes between Yemen and Syria. In 1987, Patricia Crone argued the main routes bypassed it entirely. That is still contested. Ptolemy's 2nd century geography lists an Arabian town called Makaraba, long read as Mecca, a reading now disputed. Most historians accept the broad outline while doubting the detail. The tradition reports about 3 years of private preaching, then a public declaration, then the Quraysh, Mecca's ruling clans, turning against it. Scholars read the friction as social and economic as much as doctrinal. The message rejected the deities of the sanctuary. The tradition presents Meccans standing as resting on that shrine. Around 615, a group of followers crossed the Red Sea to the Christian kingdom of Aksum in the Ethiopian highlands. Ibn Ishaq lists 11 men and 4 women in the first party, then 83 men and 18 women in a second. The Aksumite king, Al-Najashi in Arabic, gave them protection. Coins attest a king named Arma. An image on his silver coinage has been read as the Holy Sepulchre, which would put him after Persia took Jerusalem in 614. Another reading places him earlier. Whether he is the man in the story is unresolved. The pressure became a boycott. Quraysh clans agreed neither to trade with nor marry into Muhammad's clan, the Banu Hashim, and confined them to a ravine beside the sanctuary. Tradition dates it about 616 to 619 and says the agreement was written out and hung inside the Kaaba. 2 deaths in 619 struck the movement: Khadija, Muhammad's wife and first supporter, and Abu Talib, the uncle whose clan sheltered him. With Abu Talib went the clan's protection. A journey to Taif brought refusal. Then Yathrib, an oasis 340 kilometers north, sent delegates to the pass of Aqaba, 12 in 621, 75 the next year. In 622 the community began to leave. A single sheet of papyrus in Vienna records a delivery of sheep. Found at Heracleopolis in Egypt, written twice over, in Greek and in Arabic. Livestock handed over as a down payment on tax. Each version carries a date. 30 Parmudi of the first in Dition, Egyptian, and Jamada the first, year 22. The first converts to the 25th of April, 643. The conversion is ours, not the scribes. That makes it the oldest surviving document dated by the Islamic era, 21 years after the year it counts from. The era was applied backwards. Tradition credits the caliph Umar, around 638. Year 1 was 622. That year Muhammad and a body of followers left Mecca for the oasis of Yathrib. Yathrib was old. A Babylonian inscription from Haran, cut for Nabonidus, 6th century BC, listed among the settlements of northwest Arabia. Ptolemy's geography, mid-2nd century AD, calls it Ayathripa, not a city but a scatter of date groves and fortified compounds, held by rival Arab clans, the Aws and the Khazraj, alongside 3 prominent Jewish clans. It came to be called Al-Medina, the city. What followed survives as a text of some 47 clauses, transmitted through Ibn Hisham's edition of Ibn Ishaq, compiled roughly 2 centuries later. Historians mostly accept it as early and disagree about the rest. One agreement or several stitched together, 622 or after. The signatories are one community distinct from other people. The Jews of Banu Awf are one community with the believers, for the Jews their religion, for the Muslims theirs. Then the fighting. At Badr, in March 624, roughly 300 men from Medina met a Quraysh force, put at 600 to 1,000. 14 dead on one side, about 70 on the other, 70 taken prisoner. Every figure comes from later compilers. A year later at Uhud, 3,000 Meccans killed 62 to 75 defenders, then withdrew without taking Medina. In 627 a Confederate army returned and found a trench cut across the northern approach, the only side left open. The siege lasted about 20 nights and dissolved. Afterwards the tradition reports the killing of the men of the Jewish clan Banu Qurayza. Figures range from 400 to 900, all disputed. The Truce of Hudaybiyah, 628, ran 10 years on paper and 2 in practice. In the winter of 629 to 630, about 10,000 men entered Mecca almost unopposed. The images in the Kaaba were destroyed, the sanctuary was kept. Delegations came from Najran and Yemen. At Tabuk in the far north, the army camped and rulers came in to submit by treaty and tax, among them the ruler of Isla on the Gulf. Muhammad died at Medina on June 8, 632, by modern reckoning. Within a year, tribes across the peninsula had stopped paying and withdrawn allegiance. In the British Library, there is a Syriac manuscript copied in 724. A priest called Thomas set down a short notice. In the year 945, on Friday the 4th of February, at the 9th hour, there was a battle between the Romans and the Arabs of Muhammad in Palestine, 12 miles east of Gaza. The Seleucid year 945 is 634. Thomas records 4,000 villagers killed, Christians, Jews and Samaritans, and the Romans in flight. Thomas was not a Muslim, and he names Muhammad. Muhammad died in 632. Abu Bakr, chosen to lead at Medina, spent a year fighting tribes across Arabia in what Arabic tradition calls the Ridda Wars. Before it was finished, columns were already moving outward from Medina, north and east. Umar succeeded him in August 634. In August 636, a Byzantine field army was destroyed on the Yarmouk, a tributary of the Jordan. Arabic accounts written more than a century later claim 70 to 120,000 Roman dead. Modern estimates are far lower. Troop numbers are guesses. Jerusalem surrendered by agreement. In 637 or 638, the sources disagree. Eastward, the Sasanian army broke at Qadisiyah, near Hira. Al-Tabari's dates for it span 3 years. Most historians settle on late 636. Ctesiphon, the capital on the Tigris, fell in March 637. The last large Sasanian army was destroyed in the passes at Nahavand in 642. Yazdijerd III kept moving east and was killed near Merv in 651. The accounts differ, a miller after his purse or a governor's orders. In Egypt, the fortress of Babylon, at what is now Old Cairo, fell on the 9th of April 641. Alexandria went by treaty, signed that November, completed in September 642. From 643, there survives a papyrus receipt in Greek and Arabic for 65 sheep, requisitioned as tax. Cyrenaica fell in 642, Tripoli in 643. Libya to eastern Iran, in under 25 years. No single cause explains it. Rome and Persia had fought each other for 26 years, from 602 to 628. Plague crossed Mesopotamia in 627 and 628. It killed the Persian king, Kavad II. Between 628 and 632, the Persian throne changed hands repeatedly. Syria had been under Persian occupation and was barely reattached. The oldest explanation, that subject populations welcomed the newcomers, has not held up. John of Nikiu, a Coptic bishop writing around 690, describes not welcome but plunder and flight. What the documents show is narrower. Cities buying terms, taxes redirected, landholders left in place. In 638 and 639, plague reached the army camp at Amwas and killed most of the Syrian command. Umar was killed in 644, Uthman in 656. Ali succeeded him, governed from Kufa, and was killed there in 661. Ali's son was acknowledged there for months, then came to terms. Authority passed to the governor of Syria at Damascus. Start on the right bank of the Euphrates, upstream of modern Raqqa. Arab geographers called it Siffin. No excavation has ever looked for the battle, and the likeliest site lies under Lake Assad. Shrines at Raqqa to 2 men who fell here were rebuilt in recent decades and have since been destroyed. Everything known about the fighting here in July 657 comes from written accounts. The earliest to survive composed some 170 years later. The sequence began in Medina. Armed petitioners from Egypt and Iraq arrived with grievances over appointments and revenue. They besieged the house of the Caliph Uthman for roughly 40 days. On June 17, 656, they broke in and killed him. A caliph had been killed by Muslims, and no procedure existed for what came next. Ali ibn Abi Talib, the Prophet's cousin and son-in-law, was acclaimed caliph. 2 senior companions, Talha and Al-Zubair, and the Prophet's widow Aisha opposed him. Their armies met outside Basra on December 8, 656. Ali won. In January 657, he moved his seat to Kufa in Iraq. Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan had governed in Syria from Damascus since 639 and was Uthman's kinsman. He refused allegiance until Uthman's killers were punished. Ali did not punish them. Some were in his own camp. That brought both armies to Siffin. After several days, Syrians raised pages of the Quran on their lances and called for the book to judge between them. The fighting stopped. Arbitration was agreed, held at Dumat al-Jandal and then at Udru in most accounts, and settled nothing. Thousands of Ali's own men rejected the arbitration and left. They were called Kharijites, those who went out. Ali destroyed their camp at the Narawan Canal east of the Tigris on July 17, 658. In January 661, a Kharijite struck Ali in the mosque at Kufa. He died of the wound. Ali's son Hassan ceded the caliphate to Muawiyah later that year, which some early sources call the year of the community. Muawiyah died in 680. His son Yazid succeeded him. Ali's second son Husayn set out from Mecca toward Kufa, where supporters had invited him. An Umayyad force blocked the road and forced his party to halt at Karbala on October 2nd. A larger army arrived, and he was killed there on October 10, 680. Those who backed Ali held that authority belonged within the Prophet's family, and that Ali had been designated. Those who backed the caliphs in the order they came held that the community's leading men had chosen legitimately each time. Private mourning for Hussein is reported from the first years after Karbala. The first state-sponsored procession, with markets closed, was ordered in Baghdad in 963. Modern historians generally hold that neither case existed in finished form in the 650s, and that both were argued into shape afterwards, in Kufa, Basra, Damascus, and Baghdad. Start with a gold coin, 4¼ grams, struck in the year 77 of the Islamic calendar, 696 or 697 by the Christian one. Byzantine solidi carried the emperor's portrait. Sasanian silver carried the king's. This one carries no figure, only writing. Around the reverse margin, in the name of God, this dinar was struck in the year 77. The coin names no mint. Damascus is a modern attribution. Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan moved the capital there in 661 and made the office hereditary. It stayed in Damascus 83 years. In 744 Marwan II moved it to Haran. The machinery underneath was inherited. In Egypt, tax receipts went on in Greek and Coptic. A cache from Qam Ishqa, Aphrodito in the Greek records, holds letters from Qura ibn Sharik, governor from 709, some Arabic, some Greek, some both on one sheet. The bureaus were converted to Arabic in stages, Iraq around 697, Syria around 700. Between 706 and 715, the Great Mosque of Damascus rose inside the walls of a Roman temple precinct, on the site of the Cathedral of John the Baptist. In Jerusalem, the Dome of the Rock was finished in the year 72, 691 or 692. Its gold Kufic script is the earliest dated monumental Quranic text. The dedication now names Al-Mamun, an Abbasid caliph who reigned more than a century later. His name was set in over the builders. In 711, a force under Tariq ibn Ziyad crossed from Ceuta to the rock that took his name. The Visigothic king Roderick was killed that July. The field has never been fixed. The Guadalete and La Janda are both proposed. Toledo and Córdoba fell within 2 years. In October 732, a column under Abd al-Rahman al-Ghafiqi was broken between Tours and Poitiers. He was killed. Some modern historians argue for 733. Eastward, Muhammad ibn al-Qasim took Dibel on the lower Indus in 712 and pushed upriver to Multan. Estimates of the caliphate's area at its widest run from 11 to 15 million square kilometers. Constantinople held. An army and fleet under Maslama sat outside the walls from August 717 to August 718, then withdrew. Greek fire, winter, Bulgars at their back. Much of what ended the dynasty came from inside its own provinces. Non-Arab converts, the Mawali, were often still assessed the taxes of non-Muslims. Umar II issued an edict against that. It did not hold. Berbers rose in 739 or 740 and destroyed an army near the Cebu in 741. Black banners went up at Merv in 747. On January 25, 750, the last Umayyad field army was broken on the Great Zab. Marwan was killed in Egypt that August. The bureaus and the coinage carried on. The capital did not. In the Bodleian Library in Oxford is an Arabic manuscript catalogued as Huntington 214. A scribe finished it in 1342. It contains a book on calculation by restoring and balancing, written in Baghdad around 820 by Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi. The original is lost. Every Arabic copy is centuries younger than its author. The word in the title is al-Jabr, restoring. Latin translators of the 12th century kept it. It became algebra. Al-Khwarizmi wrote another book on reckoning with Indian numerals. The Arabic text of that one is lost too. It survives in Latin versions that open Dixit algorithmi. His name became the word algorithm. The city was new. The Abbasids had taken the caliphate by force. The revolt opened in June 747 near Merv in Khorasan, under black banners, commanded by Abu Muslim. In November 749, Abu al-Abbas was proclaimed caliph in the mosque at Kufa. In January 750, the last Umayyad caliph, Marwan II, lost a battle on the Great Zab. He was killed in Egypt that August. Power moved from Damascus to Iraq. In 762, the Caliph al-Mansur broke ground on the west bank of the Tigris. Later writers say his astrologers Nabacht and Masha'Allah picked the hour, the 30th of July. Those accounts were written long after the fact. He named the place Madinat al-Salam, the city of peace. It had 4 gates, each named for the road it opened. Kufa, Basra, Khorasan, Syria. Nothing of the round city has been excavated. Its plan is known only from written descriptions, whose estimates of its diameter disagree. Translation had begun earlier. An embassy from Sind reached Al-Mansur in 771 or 773 with a Sanskrit astronomical treatise. Al-Fazari and Yaqub ibn Tariq turned it into tables called the Zij al-Sindhind. Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf ibn Matar put Euclid's Elements into Arabic, revised it for the Caliph Al-Ma'mun, and translated the Almagest, Ptolemy's astronomy from Alexandria. Hunayn ibn Ishaq, born at Al-Hira in 808, a physician of the Church of the East, listed 129 works of Galen in a letter recording which had been translated and by whom. He traveled after manuscripts and found half of one treatise in Damascus. Much of this is credited to an institution called the Beit al-Hikmah. The evidence is thinner than the name suggests. Dimitri Gudas argues it was a library and administrative bureau on Sasanian lines, and that none of the Greek to Arabic translators, Hunayn included, mentions it. Paper carried it. The familiar story sends Chinese papermakers west as captives after the Battle of Talas in 751. Jonathan Bloom argues that paper was already in Samarkand, and that Central Asian methods differed. A mill is recorded at Baghdad in the 790s. In 987, a Baghdad bookseller, Ibn al-Nadim, catalogued about 10,000 titles. Most of them no longer exist. About 8 kilometers west of Córdoba, on a terraced slope below the Sierra Morena, lie the ruins of Madinat al-Zura. Abd al-Rahman III began building it around 936. A tenth of its 112 hectares is excavated. It was sacked in 1010 and left in ruins by 1013. It was never reoccupied. 7 years before work began, on January 16, 929, Abd al-Rahman III stopped calling himself Emir. He took the title Emir al-Mu'minin, commander of the faithful. The coin struck in Córdoba carried it. The title had usually belonged to one man. Now 3 claimed it. The second claim in this telling was older. Abdullah, titled al-Mahdi, was proclaimed caliph at Sijil Masa in August 909 and publicly at Raqqada, in what is now Tunisia, on January 5, 910. His movement was Ismaili Shia. The dynasty is called Fatimid, from its claimed descent from Fatima, the prophet's daughter. In 1011, an assembly in Baghdad declared that descent false. Historians have not settled the genealogy from the surviving evidence. In February 969, a Fatimid army under Jawhar left Africa for Egypt. Negotiations at Fustat broke down. The excited force from Giza was destroyed on July 3. Jawhar entered 3 days later. North of the old city, he laid out a new walled enclosure, Al-Qahira. Cairo. Construction of its congregational mosque, Al-Azhar, began on April 4, 970. The Caliph Al-Mu'izz arrived in 973. The oldest claim sat in Baghdad, and it was the weakest. On December 19, 945, the Dalamite Ahmad ibn Buya entered the city unopposed. The Caliph granted him the title Emir al-Amara. The Buyids were Shia. They kept the Abbasid Caliph in place. The sermon and the coinage needed a name, and they had no candidate of their own to put there. At Ghazni, the Caliph recognized Mahmud in 999 as Yemen al-Dawla. He is the first ruler commonly called Sultan. When he took the title is not established. From 1001 he raided northern India for 25 years, reaching Somnath in Gujarat in 1026. On May 23, 1040, near Merv, Turkmen under the Seljuk family destroyed a Ghaznavid army at Dandanakan. In December 1055, Tughril Beg entered Baghdad. Buyid rule there ended. The Caliph stayed. Tughril's nephew Alp Arslan met the Byzantine Emperor Romanos IV outside Manzikert, north of Lake Van, on August 26, 1071. Romanos was captured and later deposed. Every figure for the two armies is disputed. Alp Arslan turned east. Turkmen had raided the plateau since the 1060s. They settled during the civil wars that followed. The Cordoban claim was already finished. In 1031, the notables of Cordoba abolished the caliphate rather than name anyone else. In 1067, the Seljuk Vizier Nizam al-Mulk opened a madrasa in Baghdad. The caliph's name still appeared on the coins. Clermont sits in the Auvergne, more than 3,000 kilometers from Jerusalem. On the 27th of November 1095, during a church council, Pope Urban II preached in a field outside the town, to clergy and laity. 5 accounts of it survive. No two agree on the wording, all written after the armies left. Jerusalem fell on the 15th of July 1099, after about 5 weeks of siege. What followed was a massacre. How many died is not known. Ibn al-Athir, more than a century later, gives 70,000 dead. Modern historians treat that figure as an exaggeration and agree on nothing to put in its place. The counterattack came from rival dynasties over 2 generations. Zengi took Edessa in December 1144, then Nur al-Din from Aleppo, and from 1154 Damascus. Then Salah al-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub, who ended 2 centuries of Fatimid rule in Cairo in 1171. Damascus came to him in 1174, Aleppo in 1183, Egypt and Syria under one command. In 1187 his army cut the field army of the Kingdom of Jerusalem off from water at the Horns of Hittin, a twin-peaked basalt hill west of the Sea of Galilee, and destroyed it on the 4th of July. Jerusalem surrendered on the 2nd of October by negotiation. Ransom was set at 10 dinars for a man, 5 for a woman, with 40 days to pay. Those who could not pay were enslaved. Richard of England took part of the coast. The truce of 1192 left the strip from Tyre to Jaffa in Frankish hands and Jerusalem in Muslim ones. From 1219, the armies of Chinggis Khan entered Transoxiana. Bokhara and Samarkand fell in 1220, Merv and Nishapur in 1221. The chronicles give slaughter figures in the hundreds of thousands, 1 over a million. Historians read these as literary, not statistical. In December 1256 Alamut, in the Elburz Mountains, surrendered. The siege of Baghdad opened in late January 1258. The city gave in on the 10th of February. The Caliph al-Mustasim was put to death about 10 days later. The sources disagree on how. Estimates of the dead run from 90,000 to 1 million. None can be tested. The canals east of Baghdad were already silting up before the Mongols came. That decline began 3 centuries earlier, with a breach cut in a revolt of the 930s. Libraries burned. Later accounts say the Tigris ran black with ink from the books thrown in. The scale of the loss is unrecorded. Aleppo was stormed in January 1260. Damascus opened its gates that March. At Ain Jalut, on the 3rd of September 1260, the Mamluk army out of Egypt broke a Mongol force. Qutuz was dead within 2 months. Baybars took his place. From the Nile to the Oxus, the political map had been remade in 40 years. In a fort above Portsmouth Harbor stands a bronze tube 5 meters long, about 17 tons. Cast into the gun is a line, the work of Munir Ali, in the month of Rajab, year 868. That is 1464. It is not one of the guns that broke the walls of Constantinople 11 years earlier. Those are gone. This is the closest surviving thing to them. Mehmed II took the city on May 29, 1453. In January 1517, an Ottoman army entered Cairo and ended the Mamluk Sultanate. Ottoman sultans had used the title of caliph for over a century. From 1517, they also held Mecca and Medina. Whether the last Abbasid caliph handed the title over is disputed. Contemporary Ottoman sources describe no transfer. Twice Ottoman armies reached Vienna and twice stopped. In 1529 and on September 12, 1683, when an Allied relief force under Poland's John Sobieski came off the Kahlenberg. At Karlowitz in 1699 the Ottomans signed away most of Hungary. In 1501 Ismail, hereditary head of a Sufi order, took Tabriz and was proclaimed Shah. His dynasty made Twelver Shurism the state religion of Iran, which is why Iran is Shia majority today. It was imposed as well as taught. Sunni institutions were suppressed, with killing at Tabriz, and scholars came from Iraq, Bahrain, and Jabal Amil in present-day Lebanon. Historians put the Shia majority about a century later. On August 23, 1514, the empires met on the plain of Calderon. Ottoman guns broke a Safavid cavalry that had none. The frontier, settled by treaty in 1639, lies close to today's Turkey-Iran border. Near Panipat on April 21, 1526, Babur defeated Ibrahim Lodi. His memoir never totals his guns. The artillery figures usually quoted are modern. His grandson Akbar abolished the pilgrimage tax on Hindus in 1563, the jizya the year after. Work began at Agra around 1632 on the tomb of Shah Jahan's wife, Mumtaz Mahal. Aurangzeb died in the Deccan in 1707. Estimates of the empire's population then run above 100 million. Reconstructions not counts. Islam reached West Africa mainly by trade rather than conquest. Timbuktu, north of the bend of the Niger, traded in books as well as salt. Ahmad Baba, deported to Marrakesh in 1594, said soldiers took 1,600 volumes from him. Songhai's army had already been broken at Tondabai in March 1591 by a smaller force carrying firearms. A dated grave of a Muslim ruler stands at Samudra in northern Sumatra, 1297. An inscribed stone found in Terengganu sets out 10 rules of Islamic law. Its date reads 1303 or 1387. Specialists disagree. Gunpowder Empires is a 20th century label. It overstates the guns. Firearms alone explain none of the three. In 1798, a press aboard Napoleon Bonaparte's flagship produced a single sheet of Arabic type, a proclamation to the people of Egypt. It opened, "In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. There is no God but God. He has no son and no associate in his rule." Copies went ashore with the troops who took Alexandria. A commission of 151 scholars followed. The sheet claimed the French had destroyed the papacy, expelled the Knights of Malta, and were themselves faithful Muslims. In Cairo, the chronicler Abd al-Rahman al-Jabardi read it and corrected the grammar line by line. The occupation lasted 3 years. What it announced lasted longer. From 1805, an Albanian officer named Muhammad Ali governed Egypt in the Sultan's name until 1848, twice at war with him, building conscript armies, monopolies, and technical schools on European models. On the 3rd of November 1839, in the Gulhane Garden beside Topkapi, an edict promised security of life, honor, and property to every subject regardless of creed. It opened the reform era called the Tanzimat. The reforms did not slow the maps. A French army landed at Sidi Frej in June 1830 and entered Algiers in July. Russian troops took Tashkent in 1865, then Samarkand in 1868, and Khiva in 1873. The Dutch attacked Aceh in 1873 and fought there for 30 years. After the rebellion of 1857, the British deposed the last Mughal emperor and shipped him to Rangoon. The Ottoman treasury defaulted in 1875. A bondholders' commission then collected revenues on salt and tobacco. Britain occupied Egypt after Tel el-Kebir in September 1882 and stayed. Argument ran beside occupation. The journal Al-Mana began publishing in Cairo in 1898, arguing for renewal through the earliest sources. A seminary founded at Deoband in 1866 argued for renewal through the schools. The Ottoman Constitution of 1876 named the Sultan Supreme Caliph, protector of the Muslim religion. The claim was never universal. Other dynasties had used the title, and Shia traditions held a different account of legitimate authority. The empire entered the war in October 1914. In November, the caliph's call to arms was read out at Istanbul. It produced no general rising. In June 1916, after correspondence with Britain, Sharif Hussein proclaimed a revolt at Mecca. The armistice was signed at Mudros in October 1918. Britain and France had already drawn spheres in the Sykes-Picot correspondence. The mandates were allotted at San Remo in April 1920. On the 3rd of March 1924, the Grand National Assembly at Ankara passed Law 431. Article 1. The Caliph is deposed. Within weeks, Sharif Hussein claimed the title. Scholars met in 1926 to replace it and concluded that they could not. Start with a car leaving Dalmabas Palace before dawn on March 4, 1924, driven west to Catalca, where a train waited. The day before, the Turkish Grand National Assembly had passed a law abolishing the caliphate. Abdülmecid II, the last Ottoman caliph, was inside with his family, stripped of Turkish citizenship and bound for Switzerland. The office ended by statute. Claims followed. Sharif Hussein of Mecca proclaimed himself caliph within days. None was agreed. Scholars met at Al-Azhar in Cairo in 1926 to take up the question. A congress convened in Mecca that same year, called by Ibn Sa'd. Neither produced a caliph. How much authority the office still held is disputed. Ibn Sa'd's forces took Mecca in 1924, and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia was proclaimed in 1932. 6 years later, on 3 or March 4, 1938, a well called Dammam No. 7, drilled on the Dammam Dome, yielded 1,585 barrels in a day. Tehran grew up around it. Then independence, in a rush. Indonesia declared it on August 17, 1945. Pakistan was created on August 14, 1947, and partition displaced 12 to 18 million people across Punjab and Bengal. Estimates of the dead run from 200,000 to 2 million. No reliable count was made. Algeria's war ended in independence in 1962. Institutions followed the borders. OPEC was founded in Baghdad in September 1960. The Organization of the Islamic Conference was founded in Rabat in 1969, renamed the Organization of Islamic Cooperation in 2011. It lists 57 member states. A recruitment agreement signed in Bonn on October 30th, 1961 opened West Germany to Turkish workers. Counts of how many came before recruitment stopped in 1973 run from 650,000 to 870,000. Then the count, an estimate. Pew Research Center puts the world's Muslims at 2 billion in 2020, 25.6% of humanity, up 347 million in 10 years. The figures rest on more than 2,700 censuses, registers, and surveys. The largest Muslim populations are not Arab. Indonesia holds about 239 million Muslims. Pakistan is next, at 227 million. India follows with 213 million, or 15% of the country. Bangladesh, 151 million, comes fourth. The Middle East and North Africa hold about a fifth of the world's Muslims. Pew puts Shia Muslims at 10 to 13% of the total, and calls that range approximate. The growth is demographic rather than conversion. Pew puts Muslim fertility at 2.9 children per woman, against 2.2 for non-Muslims. Its 2015 projections put 34% of Muslims under 15 in 2010. About 1 adult in 100 raised Muslim leaves the religion, and about the same number join it. The net effect is near zero. Muslim prayer is oriented toward one point on the map,